Tonight, we're going to be doing a presentation on data centers in our communities, what we know, what's at stake, and what we can do. So if you want to start up the screen back there we go, great. We have two speakers tonight from Sierra Club. This first speaker is Sally Burgess. Sally is a downstate advocacy director of the Illinois chapter of the Sierra Club, and she lives in Edwardsville. She has an MBA from Fontbonne University in St. Louis, as well as a Master of Science in Environmental Policy Communication from Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville, which is her hometown. Sally serves on the steering committee of the Illinois Clean Jobs Coalition, where she focuses on renewable energy, moving away from fossil fuel economy, and now data centers. As part of her Sierra Club work, she provides support to the chapter's mining issues team, the Clean Power team, and the Shawnee National Forest Committee. Sally and her husband is here tonight. They consider themselves to be hobby homesteaders and live in an area surrounded by farm fields. They have goats, many dogs, chickens, and one duck. The other speaker with us tonight is Henry Robertson. Henry is a volunteer with Sierra Club, and he is the energy chair of the Missouri chapter of the Sierra Club. He was formerly a lawyer at the Great Rivers Environmental Law Center. So with no further ado, we'll have them come up and do the presentation. We'll have questions at the end. If you have any questions, you can hold them to then, but thanks again.
Thank you very much. How is the volume?
Perfect.
Great. Nice to see you all tonight. I'm sorry. I see. I can get closer to the mic. I can also do a handhold if that's handy. So wonderful to be with you tonight. As Dave said, I'm from the Illinois side of things. I don't know what your experience was in Missouri, but last fall, we had just wrapped up passing the Clean and Reliable Grid Affordability Act, CERGA. We had just gotten that passed in the legislature last October, and then it seems like we were just hit by a tsunami of requests from communities wanting help pushing back against data centers. People were waking up and hearing on the media that there was a data center proposed for their area. First they'd heard of it in the media. So that lack of transparency with city and county officials has been part of the problem, and it's been rampant around the United States. There should be a public participation process. It has not been evident, and that's one of the things we'll address tonight. Henry and I are going to be doing kind of a high level. I'll be doing some general information about data centers, and then Henry's really going to bring it into Missouri and what you folks are dealing with and different ways that you can push back. One of the questions that comes up is there anything we can do when we're working against these corporations that are extravagantly wealthy? Can we actually do anything to impact these decisions? Yeah, we sure can. This was as of second quarter of 2025. It was last year that there really seemed to be an uprising and resistance against data centers. And at least $98 billion worth of data centers have been either stopped entirely or delayed because of community pushback. I brought this slide today, I put this slide in just today because I was on a webinar with AI Now, which is, I highly recommend if you're interested in doing a deep dive on data centers, they're going to be doing 7 more weeks of webinars, Wednesday at noon, and they're talking about everything from moratoriums, really digging into the details of data centers. And the point that they made, they have this toolkit, North Star Data Center Policy Toolkit. Sorry, gotta get close to the mic. One of the points one of the speakers made was, this is an urgent threat. It's based on speculation. We don't even know if these data centers have vendors lined up. We don't know that they're going to be able to fill these huge buildings that they are planning. We don't know that they're going to be able to make money, and therefore, are they going to stay in business? Is this just a big rush, and then there's going to be a burst, a bubble burst? What is that called? Bust. So we're not sure. There's just a lot riding on it. But it's based on speculation. They don't know for sure. And it incredibly concentrates power with just a few individuals, extremely wealthy individuals, will have a ton of money and a ton of power over our lives because they're using our data to put these things together. So we know that we're going to lose some fights, right? Festus Council approves the $6 billion data center. We all saw that in the news a little while ago. However, leadership matters. The city council in Festus was not listening to their constituents. Their constituents were saying, we do not want this. And so the constituents responded by firing them. The leadership of those constituents really mattered as well. So I really wonder if a week or so later, the folks in Yorkville, Illinois, having seen what happened in Festus, thought, there's a lot of pushback in Yorkville as well. Maybe we really don't want to proceed with this data center. They lost their appetite. So data centers are simply big buildings with a lot of computers in them. And they require computer chips to do the computing, obviously. Have to have energy to power the chips, and then more energy to cool the IT infrastructure, water for cooling, and then land for the facility itself. They've been around since the 40s. We know that some of them provide essential services. Our digital footprint has grown over the decades, and many of the things that we do every day has a data center involved in some way. It could be accessing your benefits through government sites or financial services, but many things that we do require data centers. Those aren't the data centers we're really talking about, though. We're talking about what's called hyperscale data centers, and there's really not one definition of what that means, but they are huge facilities. The folks in Springfield, Illinois, is one of the communities that woke up, heard on the news that a data center was about to be voted on in their community. 620 megawatt, I think, many, many acres of land. It ultimately is moving forward. Huge facilities. And I think Henry will be able to talk to us more about some of the really big projects that are coming your way. So generative AI is what is pushing this. Generative AI is that thing that allows you to take a photograph and turn it into something different, make you look like a royalty.
Pornography.
What's that?
Typically pornography, it seems.
Okay. Generative AI also allows your, students to use AI for their homework assignments. And some of them are doing it very well. When they're being taught how to use it effectively, they're using it very well. They are large learning models, and they have to be trained. And to do that, they scrape the internet for data. So they're going into our social media, they're going into Reddit, they're going into every piece of data that's out there, and they're gathering that information up. And that's how they are able to come up with these systems that respond to our prompts. They have our information. There's a wonderful book called Empire of AI, written by Karen Howe. She is an AI specialist who spent 3 years following Sam Altman with OpenAI and the whole drama around what he's been up to. And she talks about the other leading companies as well. So Google, Meta, the biggies, they are the ones who are pushing this. They've got so much money to push it, and they are amassing so much power. She says the empire has never been richer. These people are so wealthy. Meanwhile, the rest of the world is beginning to collapse under the weight of the exploding human and material costs of this new era. So why now? It's this generative AI. It is being used more and more often, so there's a supply and demand issue. And these folks are counting on the technology getting even faster, even broader, giving us more things that we can do with it so that more and more of us will use it more and more often. So they need these huge, they think they need these huge facilities for that service. Ultimately, they're leading toward, apparently, something that does not yet exist, but it's called artificial general intelligence, and that is what is the really scary stuff we hear about from time to time that could wipe out humanity. That does not exist yet, but of course it is under development. So ChatGPT, OpenAI, Gemini, Claude, all of those require a lot more computational power, and that is what's pushing this. Oops, I think I just did something bad. There we go. That's what is pushing this. So why Missouri? Well, apparently, low operating costs and incentives, central location and good infrastructure, diverse site locations. A lot of rural areas are being targeted, I understand. And according to Missouri Partnership Caves, I haven't been able to find anything about a data center being built in a cave, but they indicated that that was a desirable thing from the perspective of the data center developers. Strong talent pool, and then also a lot of renewable energy and sustainability. We know that data centers are harming our communities, and we know this because they've been around long enough that we actually have the data to work with. Water is a huge issue. One of the numbers that you've probably been hearing a lot is that large data centers can consume up to 5 million gallons a day. They can, that is an outlier, that is not happening on a regular basis, but that can happen. And when you add that up over a year, that is an awful lot of water. They are getting more technologically advanced, so they are focused on how to reduce the water they use, and they're using more and more often something called a closed loop, which allows them to use the same water a lot, many, many times with chemicals added, and then they have to discharge that somewhere. In many cases, if they're going to discharge into the municipal system, the wastewater treatment plants are not designed to deal with the level of chemicals that are going to be coming their way. So in a lot of cases, they're required to pre-treat the water before they send it on to the wastewater treatment center. Still, you can imagine with the infrastructure having not been upgraded in so many different areas, that it's still a big stress on the infrastructure. That's one of the things data centers are being called upon to help with in terms of the financial aspect. This page is from a toolkit called the Big Tech Unchecked Toolkit that was put together by one of our Sierra Club chapters. So lighting is also an issue. Some people have described it as living near a football stadium, just so bright. And others say it's like being near an industrial park. We know that artificial light is disturbing to our circadian rhythms. We were just talking about migratory birds, and we probably all know that there are certain times of the year that it's important to turn off all of our lights outside so that we disturb them less. You can imagine what things are getting to be like for our wildlife. It can suppress the production of melatonin, which regulates sleep cycles. I'm going to go ahead and do this. It's linked to increased risks of insomnia that can lead to depression, and it can also create metabolic disorders. We just talked about wildlife disruption. Disorients the migratory birds, of course, and then alters the behavior of insects and other animals that rely on natural light cycles. We also hear from farmers that farmers who are near a data center It's not working? Okay. Farmers report that when data centers arrive in their area, their cattle have a tendency to lose weight. They actually lose body mass. Chickens lay fewer eggs. Horses get agitated and difficult to work with, and that can be unsafe for the humans. Noise pollution is another issue. Some people say it's like a low hum that is just constant. Imagine your neighbor's lawnmower, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And some people say it's more like a low-pitch roar. Our neighbors in Illinois, in Aurora, talk about it sounds like a helicopter is hovering above their community just all the time. That developer says, oh, sorry, there's some things we can do about that, and say that they are re-engineering it, that I know of, the noise level is still really, really high. It happens because the air handling units, the air-cooled chillers, the cooling towers, the backup generators are all outside of the facility. And it's a low frequency, these are low frequency waves that can travel a good distance. The cost to human health, cognitive impairment, sleep disturbances again, stress, anxiety, and an increased risk for cardiovascular disease, among other things. Air pollution. Gas plants staying online longer. Henry's going to talk to us more about that. And then diesel backup generators. The diesel backup generators have the small particulate matter, which actually lodges in your lung tissue and creates damage. It leads to cardiovascular and cancer rates being higher, neurological events. We're now learning that because these data centers run so hot, that they're creating heat island effects, and that can lead to people experiencing heat exhaustion and even heat stroke. And then water contamination is also a risk. The air pollution, as it has to do with the diesel backup generators, is one of the areas that is really disturbing. These large centers require, any center wants twice as much diesel backup generation as they have capacity. So it doesn't mean that they're going to use all of those backup generators at one time if the power goes down, but they want to have access to it. They might want to just go offline and use backup generators when it's a really hot day and there's a big load on the grid. They don't want to experience an interruption in service. They want to have 24/7 service. So they may choose to fire up their backup generators. In Illinois, we at least got a little piece of legislation passed last year that requires Tier 4 backup generators, which emits less of the bad pollutants, the NOx and the particulate matter, but many centers use Tier 2. And you can imagine, we've had 7-day power outages in our area. You can imagine being near one of these things and having the power out for 7 days and these things going. The noise and the pollution would just be incredible. After just a short period of exposure to these particular toxic air pollutants, it can cause breathing and other health issues. And I believe you are up next, Mr. Robertson.
Are you coming back, or are you just talking, or are you done?
I'm going to stay up here. I'm not done. Advance the slide for you, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Hello? Yeah. I'm going to sit here like a talk show host because my back is acting up, so. This is what the people of South Haven, Mississippi have been looking at for the since 2024. These are portable natural gas generators that Elon Musk put into his data center down there. He's got permission to have 41 of these things, and so the residents have to listen to the noise and breathe the air. Data centers are estimated within just next 2 years to consume 12% of all of our electricity. And to give you an example, there's a project in Ohio, I mentioned 9.2 gigawatts. This is sponsored by the federal government. I think it has Trump's name on it, but it envisions 9.2 gigawatts of natural gas generation. I'm sure a gigawatt is not something you intuitively understand, To give you a comparison, that's equivalent to the entire generating capacity of Ameren, Missouri. You take their coal plants, a nuclear plant, natural gas, renewables, yeah, that's 9.3 gigawatts. That's enough for Ameren to serve 1.3 million households, businesses, and institutions in Missouri. So that's how much one data center project can take up, and they're getting bigger than this. And natural gas versus clean energy, that is the battle. Yeah. This data center explosion and the natural gas generation is the biggest threat we have now to our floundering attempts to shut down climate change. Renewables are still in the picture, so is nuclear, even coal. And our slogan is Beyonce, bring your own new clean energy. Next slide. You know, as you probably heard, our president hates renewable energy, and so he's demanding that nuclear plants and coal plants be kept online long after they should have shut down. So the coal plants, even the utilities who own these plants, don't want to do this because the coal plants, they're old, they need repairs, they need upgrades. They're just simply not worth making on plants that old. Nuclear plants too, same thing, 3 Mile Island, the plant that almost melted down back in 1979 is being brought back online. The backup diesel generators, Sally has covered the trouble with those. You know, they're supposed to be strictly for emergency use, but sometimes they're used a little more often than that. Next slide. Will your electric rates grow up? State law now says that data centers will bear their representative share of the costs, and customers will not be subjected to unjust or unreasonable costs. What exactly does that mean, and how does it work? The data centers will say things like, we'll actually lower your rates because we'll be taking up so much of the electricity. But that kind of depends on how much the buildup is. And it's going to be such a huge buildup in power plants, transmission lines, substations, et cetera, that overall costs are going to rise, and we're all going to pay for it. And worse than that, there's CWIP. CWIP stands for Construction Work in Progress. And that means that the utilities can charge us for the cost of building power plants before they're delivering any electricity. 50 years ago, Missouri voters passed a ballot initiative that banned CWIP. But just last year, the legislature repealed that ban. So now we're going to have to be paying while they're building these things before there may even be a data center lined up to connect to it and become a customer. We will be paying CWIP at the discretion of the utility before the data center starts paying. Although I've been told that Ameren is not going to charge CWIP for its new gas plants. Evergy on the other side of the state will. And there are horror stories concerning nuclear plants in South Carolina and Georgia where they pass CWIP. You know, in South Carolina, they were building a nuclear reactor and they never finished. And the ratepayers on the $9 billion for that. And in Georgia, they built 2 new nuclear reactors. They eventually did finish them, but way over budget. $30 billion they paid for that. And incidentally, nuclear has the attention of Missouri's governor and legislature. They are pushing for the new generation of small modular reactors, which so far have not fulfilled their promises of being cheap and easy to build. I think it's back to you now, Sam.
Yes. So we discussed earlier the lack of transparency. Have you all experienced, have any of you in the room experienced that, where you just all of a sudden, yeah, I see heads nodding and hands raising. Just all of a sudden, you're being told this thing is happening. Sometimes the vote that goes before the zoning board is 2 or 3 days away. You don't have time to organize, you don't even have time to realize what's happening. So the lack of transparency leads to a lot of unanswered questions. And I'm literally just going to run through these questions because they're important. Typical open questions. Who is the end user? You often won't be able to find out who the end user is because of non-disclosure agreements. What size will the data center be, and where will it be located on the acreage? What kind of cooling system is planned? Is it going to be air or water? Most of the time these days it's going to be water. Closed loop or open. Most of the time these days it's going to be closed, but that's not a guarantee. What is the water source? Is it going to be the municipal water source? Are they going to try to dig their own well, which can be disastrous for our aquifers? What chemicals will be added to the water? Where will it be discharged and at what temperature? And what is the energy source? And is there a power agreement with Ameren? Apparently it is possible for a data center to go through all of the permitting process, start building their data center, and still not know that they're going to be able to access the energy they need from the utility. So what happens if at some point they can't access that? The infrastructure is still being built out in anticipation of it. We get left holding the bag. How many jobs will be created? We hear that it's a huge job creator. That can be true for the first several months because of those temporary construction jobs. Those are well-paying jobs, by the way, and these folks are highly trained and they're going from project to project, and their job security is pretty good right now. But once they leave, there isn't going to be that many people remaining at the data center, and you don't have to be at the data center to work on the data center. What are the concrete long-term benefits to the community? I think we were having a conversation, a casual conversation earlier about a really good community benefits agreement, apparently that got struck between the developer that's moving into the Armory and that community. Henry may be able to tell us more about that. How does this investment compare to the costs and risks? One of the points we try to make anytime we have the opportunity is no amount of tax incentive, no amount of tax revenue coming into our community is worth destroying our community. How will the city and county protect ratepayers from increased costs for water and electricity? If increased demand causes water main breaks, that stress on the system, or electricity system failures, who's financially responsible for that? Safety concerns. You can't show up at a fire at one of these places with your water trucks. You have to have particular kind of equipment to fight this kind of fire. Will the local fire department have the equipment and the training to respond? Who's responsible for funding that? What kind of fire suppression system is required, and what are the potential environmental impacts? It used to be halon gas. Halon literally sucks the oxygen out of the air, and that's what suppresses the fire. I don't think they use halon generally these days, but it would be something along those lines. So how is that going to be managed? What is the proximity to natural areas and rivers? Water quantity, how much are you going to use? I don't know if Missouri has a good reporting system for large water users. We don't in Illinois. That's one of the things we're trying to address. Noise pollution, the effect on bats, hellbenders, birds, other wildlife. And then stormwater management for the development. We're back to you.
So what can we do? Show up. This has been our most effective tactic so far. In St. Charles, they were able to chase the developer out of town and enact a moratorium on data centers. Well, unfortunately, that developer went down the road to Festus and got what he wanted there, but then we heard what happened to the city council in Festus. State open meeting laws require most government meetings to be open to the public, and public notice must be given at least 24 hours in advance. Now, 24 hours is not a lot of notice, so you need to monitor the government websites, look for the agendas, look for meeting notices. organize your neighbors, their strength in numbers, and we can probably send action alerts to members when there's a hearing coming up. Can you back up one? Can you back up one? Yeah. This is part of the crowd at a hearing in Pacific, in Franklin County. They have two data center proposals there, one of them being the other one being just across the road from Shaw Nature Reserve. So just yesterday, the zoning board down in Franklin County issued a split decision. They disapproved the data center proposal for Pacific, but they approved the one next to Shaw Nature Reserve. Local forums. In the smaller rural counties, you got the county commission and the planning and zoning body. In larger jurisdictions like St. Louis City and County, you have other options: building, planning and development departments, comprehensive plans, sustainability plans, climate action plans, which may be violated by a data center. And zoning hearings have proven to be our big a chance to get up and be heard. Now, these don't always lead to permanent moratoria or ever lead to permanent moratoria. Usually they'll put it off for a couple of months, maybe a year, and amend their zoning ordinances to accommodate data centers. So what do we want to see in a data center ordinance? We want data centers to be a separate use, not a conditional use. If it's a conditional use, then it can be put somewhere that's not zoned for it, as long as it isn't actually forbidden in that area. Like the Armory Center data center there in St. Louis, that's being put in a place that is not zoned industrial, but they just approved the permit for it. We want renewable energy, at least battery backup, not diesel backup. Transparency, as Sally discussed. Setbacks. Now, just yesterday, we found out that the St. Louis Board of Public Service approved the conditional use permit for the Armory Data Center. They did issue a considerable list of conditions and restrictions which show you it can be done. I mean, if you can tolerate the thing being built in the first place, there's pretty good stuff in here. So it demands that noise-causing diesel generators be enclosed, that lights be shielded, pointed downwards, and comply with the Dark Sky Initiative requirements. They must have a cool roof or green roof or solar roof. The diesel generator should never be used except as emergency backup. And they need to seek LEED certification and never be used for cryptocurrency mining. Now, they also include a community benefits agreement, which is an interesting thing. These companies have so much money that they're willing to pay. They're willing to stump up for things like this. They agreed to seek no subsidies, no public subsidies, guarantee revenue and job openings preferential for city residents, community funding. They're required to use reasonable efforts to achieve 50% renewable energy. Not sure how much that'll come to. And to finish by the end of 2028. And they've also calculated the revenue they expect in tax revenue from this, $435 million in the first 10 years. The biggest share of that will go to the St. Louis public schools, like $200 million. That's almost half the total. The city gets $139 million. More is parceled out to public health and social service agencies, cultural and educational institutions. So there's a lot to like in that, but I'd still rather they didn't build it. State forums, yeah, there's a long list of permits and approvals that a data center needs at the federal and state and local levels. Clean air and water permits are handled by Department of Natural Resources. These are technical. You really got to be dedicated to dig into these. Public Service Commission regulates utilities. There are limited opportunities there for public outreach. You can always file comments through their website, and occasionally they'll have a proceeding at which members of the public are allowed to speak. And yeah, the General Assembly, like just about everybody else, was totally unprepared for the tsunami that Sally mentioned. There isn't much going on there. There are two bills which happen to be identical. They're actually good. The language is recommended by the Sierra Club. They have Republican sponsors. However, it is a little late in the session, and they're probably not going anywhere. If either of them moves, it'll be 3362, and you might want to give your state representative a buzz and say they should support that bill. They would limit energy, particularly water use. They're very good about water use, and the same kind of taxpayer protections we talked about earlier for what they're worth. We should not bear the cost for the upgrades to the electrical system that are needed for the data centers.
So before we get to Q&A, I would like to go over a resource sheet with you. If you point your camera at the QR code, looks like everybody already knows how to do that. You should be able to gather up this on your phone, and all of those links should be live. You saw a page that I referred to from the Big Tech Unchecked Toolkit. There's the Sierra Club Data Center Guidance. The League of Women Voters in Metro St. Louis did a really excellent write-up on data centers. Halt the Harm Network is another organization that's doing some really excellent work, and they have webinars all the time. You can sign up, you can be part of that conversation. Honor the Earth is looking at it from an indigenous perspective. They've got a beautiful website and a lot of resources. North Carolina Environmental Justice Network, Megawatts Over People. Friends of Prescott, pardon me, Friends of Prescott Balch. Prescott Balch is a gentleman who is a retired tech guy, and we actually had him as a speaker in Edwardsville a few weeks ago. He's really been studying this and makes the point that, yeah, there can be a lot of tax revenue that comes into your area, and the larger that percentage is of your entire budget, the harder you're going to be hit when something goes wrong with that data center. So something to keep in mind as well. But looking at his website and podcasts that he's been part of, he has a lot of really good information that we didn't get into today. And then if you're looking for some fun, there's a 3-minute YouTube by comedian Charlie Behrens and Daniel Van Kirk, How AI Data Centers Were Invented. It has some very foul language, so we didn't want to play it for you tonight, but you might enjoy watching it. It's really funny, and it really does cover a full range of things. And so now we will go back and have some Q&A. Would you like to shout, or would you like us to bring you microphones, or would you like to come up here? Oh, yes, we are recording, so we need every question to be very clear. And it looks like Dave is going to be our mic runner.
Yeah, I've got two questions. First of all, how do you turn this on? Hear it now?
Place it right next to your mouth, right?
Hear it now?
No, it's
Can you hear me now? All right, great. Okay. Two questions. I don't know if maybe Henry. First question. I know Ameren is looking for 2 additional gigawatts of new energy for the data centers. So that's new build, new power they're gonna have to come up with. Are they gonna pass that on to the rate holders, or are these data centers gonna just pay for it, and how's that gonna work? That's my first question. You wanna answer that one first?
Um, I'm having trouble. Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, well, as I said, I've been told by a reliable source that Ameren is not going to charge us quip to build these things. Now, whether, and the question there is how,
Well, it's new stuff. So if
It is
it's
new,
new
yeah.
stuff, how are they not gonna charge us for that new
don't-
energy?
they don't have, well, they won't be charging us in advance while they're building it.
But they're still gonna charge us something
Now,
for.
eventually, yeah, it's going to be, that really depends on how clearly it's dedicated to the data center's use. As I said, you know, there are going to be a lot of build out, and mostly the data centers are going to be drawing it from the local utilities grid. And it's going to be difficult to separate that out.
Yeah, but apparently, I'm sure that Ameren's got, you said they had 9.3 gigawatts right now.
Well,
Okay, so that's probably more than they actually need on a regular basis. They probably have enough for a surge. Okay, but they probably don't have enough surge to take care of 2 more gigawatts. Okay, so they're gonna have to build some new stuff, which is gonna cost them, I assume, a lot of money. And I assume it's gonna be probably natural gas for this new stuff. But they wouldn't need to build this new stuff if they weren't building these data centers, right?
well, if they're dedicated to the data centers will be paying for it.
100%.
That certainly should be. They have what are called large load tariffs,
Okay.
which are designed to save them from stranded assets. So they want long-term commitments for the data centers before they do this.
10 years was it, or something like?
12
12 years,
minimum,
okay.
12 and 17.
Okay. All right. The second question was, I saw in there that you got DNR in there, and they have to have permits, water and air permits that have to be approved for every one of these ones that, I guess the one in the city and the ones out in the rural areas too. Have that all, now, when you hear these things have been approved, I guess by the city of Festus, for instance, have the water and the air permits already been approved too? That's not to be done yet.
From DNR, no. That's
Oh,
a
yeah.
totally separate process.
Okay, is there a chance that we could shut them down on, based upon those permits?
And those permits.
What?
There's a chance, but it's not a very good
Not a
one.
very good chance.
I
Okay,
don't think so.
that's my last question.
It's worth a try because you can
Yeah.
slow them down.
Right,
And every
yeah.
time we slow them down, that's a good thing for us. And the other thing that has to come along with additional energy generation is more transmission. And so we're going to have that conversation at some point, that there is going to have to be a whole lot more transmission lines put in, because at this point they can't receive the additional 2 gigawatts or whatever it is, right? It's not, the grid is not set up for that.
So Henry, you alluded to Festus and what happened to the city council in Festus. So for those that may not know, do you want to expand on that?
Well, that's a case of the populace pushing back. The residents made it very clear they didn't want it, but the local governments always have dollar signs in their eyes. So the city council approved the data center, and the voters showed up in unusually large numbers, and an unusually large majority unseated them all. For 4. Well, there is a lawsuit pending against that, so.
I didn't think it was complete, finalized, that they were,
No. Yeah, and,
because they had to finalize the agreement,
mhm.
did they?
I'm not sure about that, but I know they do have a lawsuit pending, the citizens do, yeah.
Yeah, there was, we'll get you soon.
Okay, I'm just wondering if this whole business of not in my neighborhood isn't just going to push the data centers into rural neighborhoods where there's less organization and less ability. And it seems to me that it might be a better path to have somebody like the Sierra Club publish a standard for data centers that has battery backups, that has closed loop water systems, that uses only renewable energy, that has all of these elements into it, that takes away almost a big part of the concern about these. And then encourage the people who want to build data centers and the communities to insist that these organizations meet the Sierra standard. And that way, because I don't think you're going to stop these things. I mean, if there's money in it and there's demand for it, they're going to build them. And if they don't build them in Festus or they don't build them in Pacific, they're going to find another small town or even a place that's not a town and put up the data center there. And there they won't have any restrictions because there's no resistance. Whereas if it's in a community where there is some resistance and they can lay out standards and they can say conform to these standards, then that improves the world because it stops it from going somewhere else.
Absolutely. And part of the challenge has been that the zoning ordinances in almost any of the municipalities are not set up for data centers. They haven't faced anything like this ever. And so even the ones who have taken a critical eye have had to step back and say, how are we going to revamp our zoning ordinances to be able to even address this issue? In terms of having one set of guidelines, this is like best practices for data centers. I think there probably are documents that help with that, but again, it's going to be a municipality by municipality decision because of the zoning ordinances. So one of the fears that we have, in Illinois, we've been pretty successful at pushing back against some of these projects. They're going to go across the border to Indiana. And they are targeting communities that they think won't want to push back because they really need those tax dollars. And yeah, so you're absolutely right in the point you're making. I'm not sure that one standard of best practices will be able to be implemented, though, because of the municipality by municipality piece.
If there is a standard, though, that somebody puts out there,
Mm-hmm.
like the Sierra Club, with their name behind it, then they'll have some weight.
Accreditation.
And then people in the communities can go in and say, hey, we'll let you in, but conform to the standard, conform to the Sierra standard or some other standard, but a standard that outlines a clean practice because these things can be built, much cleaner than they are. A lot of them that have been built in the past are really dirty.
Yeah.
You can get rid of these diesel generators. You don't need them. You can use battery backups. You can use renewable energy. You can use closed loop water systems. There's just a lot you can do. And all that could be put in one document and have the backing of Sierra Club and maybe, other organizations that could all stand behind it. So it could be kind of a big movement and a big standard.
I like your idea, but I wouldn't underestimate these small counties because try putting a solar farm or a wind farm in their communities and they can fight back pretty effectively. So.
Just a quick question. The 10 to 12-year commitment from the data center is great, but is there any financial safeguard for the community if it goes bust, if the data center goes out of business?
That is not addressed in the St. Louis permit. That's probably a good subject to raise. As I said, the utilities are focused on keeping them from bailing out. So.
And I hear that some of the data center don't even have or may not have customer yet. They don't know who, well, at least we don't know who they are.
That's true of the Armory data center. You don't know who it is yet.
Yeah, we don't know who they are. We don't know if it's going to work out. It's mostly speculations.
Yes, a lot of these proposals are not yet built. It's just they're throwing proposals out there on a speculative basis. But if they go out of business, if the AI bubble bursts, well then I don't think there's no.
Hi there. My name's Phoebe. First of all, thank you for educating me about the outcome of the data center next to Shawnee H Reserve. I've been following that and just haven't checked the last couple days. So thank you. That's infuriating. Can't wait to fight that one. The Armory data center, I recently heard Mayor Kara Spencer talking about all the benefits to the community that could come out of that. Personally, I don't feel a need for AI data centers, at least where we currently stand. Based on all of the research that you lovely individuals have done, is there a need, a reason, is there a benefit that the community could gain from data centers that would justify putting them in, period?
Money.
That's not a justification. That's a construct. We made it up. It's not worth our ecology. But that's my soapbox, so I'll just give it back.
I don't think we know the answer to that. I don't think we can say yet, this is the number of data centers that are required to meet our minimum lifestyle requirements. I don't think we know that yet.
Hi, yeah, I'm Carolyn, and I'm a volunteer with Sierra Club. Sierra Club was working just recently on a industrial facility out in an unincorporated area near Overland and Creve Coeur. And we had a meeting with a lot of county people, some people from DNR about the impact of this facility. One of the issues that wasn't well covered was noise. And the county admitted that they don't have, I mean, they have a guidance, but it's probably not very, it's not going to catch problems for neighbors. These are neighbors that live near an industrial facility. And, you know, some DNR, we're used to having Missouri DNR kind of facilitate these permits, but some of them the county facilitates. And so out of that meeting came an awareness that the county probably has some work to do, especially in the noise area. And a reminder that there's a big election coming up for the St. Louis County executive. And it's going to be primaries, going to be election in November. This would be a good issue to get on the political agenda for the county executive, and related to data centers and what, whether the county would be enforcing this, or I don't know, our DNR would be the enforcer because it's big, open-ended questions. But it was a very interesting thing we learned about the St. Louis County.
Yeah, noise does come up. I've seen that in permits from DNR, and the method is not very scientific. It's kind of subjective. The conditional use permit for the Armory does require the noise-causing diesel generators to be enclosed. And there's some kind of special, I forget what the word is for it, but that should help.
Henry, I just wanted to respond to one of the questions that was raised back here concerning the use of these things. And I think the question of the use of this technology really needs to be a part of the discussion we have in opposing them. There really, really are uses for this technology. I'll give you one example. If you should go to Barnes Jewish Hospital with a suspected pulmonary embolism, the reading of that embolism will not be done primarily by a human. It will be done by AI technology, which has been demonstrated to do a better job of diagnosing your embolism than any human can do, because it can look at the contours of the image in ways that humans can't. There are many, many examples of that. And, you know, I think I really commend you and thank you for the presentations here. I was very, I thought the comment up front was very thoughtful in the notion of developing criteria that we, as concerned citizens and concerned organizations, should apply to these things, renewable energy, that sort of thing. I think a part of that calculus needs to be, what are these things going to be used for? They are, in many cases, used for not just useless, but potentially destructive purposes. But they are also used in extraordinarily beneficial ways. And we need, I think, to take that kind of question into account.
Yeah, it's hard to regulate when they develop these super intelligent AIs. Those are dangerous, in my understanding. So,
I was just going to respond to that quickly. If you read about Sam Altman's original dream for OpenAI, it was to make life better for humanity. It was to serve the greater good. And the slide that I put up with the North Point toolkit, that group, and AI Now, that group is also talking about how do we make these tools work better for low-income communities, communities that are always burdened by everything. How do we make sure this works for them and not against them? Because it is set up to work against Black and brown communities currently. It skews toward white activities. And yeah, so that is a really important question. This part of the pushback is why it is urgent that we all get involved as much as we can, and that has a lot to do with doing what they did in Festus, voting, and making sure we're voting in people who are going to make sure there is some guardrails around these data centers, because that is not, there are no regulations, and it's being fought. There was a podcast I listened to earlier today. A ton of money is going to support candidates who won't put any regulations on AI at the federal level, and just obliterating the candidates who want to do that. So people are going to be reluctant to run for office if they know they're going to have that kind of money working against them. So our work's cut out for us, but we've shown how much power we have.
Randy Weber. I just have a question. It's far-fetched, but does anybody know how an advanced country like China is handling this? Do they have a lot of data centers already? I mean, is this a direction a country like that is heading to?
well, China, I'm sure, has data centers. I don't know if they're an authoritarian, non-democratic country. So I don't know if I don't know how they're handling it, or if we could adapt that to our use.
Can I respond to that to some extent? The Chinese government has, I don't know how much you're knowledgeable regarding some of the very most critical chips that perhaps NVIDIA have developed that are in high demand for the data centers. But the Chinese government have been trying to obtain these, and previously they were constrained by limitations on the export of these critical elements for data centers. However, Trump has relaxed some of those controls on some of the, not the very top ICs, but the lower level quality integrated circuits. And so, it seems Trump is more than willing to accommodate with regards to availability, given the money that's behind it. But it seems, from what I've heard in watching the news, that actually the Chinese government have already exceeded some of the capabilities of the intelligence centers or data centers that we have created here in the U.S. at supposedly a much lower cost. And so it's like the development, China is essentially 20 years ahead of us in the development of solar panels and the implementation. They're installing something like 4 or 5 times as many solar generating power sources as the U.S. And so, you know, there's part of an answer that they are going full steam ahead because they want to actually put us into the Stone Age, so to speak, and it seems Trump is accommodating them to a large extent. That's just my opinion.
Hi. You alluded to the closed water, one of the speakers, I don't remember which one it was, that the closed water systems, that there would be some chemicals that are released from those systems that are toxic. And my question is, are the chemicals that are being released from those systems more dangerous than the open systems if we can't get rid of them? Are they, what kind of toxins are they? Are they heavy metals? What's being released into the system from those closed water systems?
Closed loop, yeah, I know they have antibacterial chemicals, anti-corrosive chemicals. I think Sally is the one to answer that. That's about all I know. I mean, the closed loop water systems, some of the companies claim, like Oracle, that they never have to change the water. I'm skeptical about that. I've heard that they can.
Having to change the water is one thing. Releasing antimicrobials into the systems where our fish and our other things, and ultimately, I mean, that's scarier almost than using water. Okay, thank you.
I have a question about, can you speak to the upgrade of these data centers once they're established? Because it seems like they're here to stay, whether we like it or not. But I understand in 3 years they have to be revamped because of technological upgrades and advances that are being made constantly. So the cost, would the cost be to the companies that use these data centers, or would the community have to be responsible for some of that? Can you speak more to that?
Well, customers, I expect, would bear the cost. Yeah, that's true. There's so many advances being made. And a lot of them could be improvements in efficiency that will somewhat alleviate the problems of water use and electricity use. We can hope for that. But there is a big question, which Sally alluded to briefly, about how are they going to make money off this? It's not immediately apparent where the market is for these things, for the for the things that AI does.
And the chips wear out quickly and have to be replaced, so that's another piece of it as well. That's a really good question.
Hi. You had spoken about light pollution, water pollution, air pollution. Is there any concern, or do you know of any concern with radiation that these entities might be putting out as well?
I have not encountered that.
Once a data center has been passed, like the one at Shaw, what can we do at that point?
Well, as I said, there are still a lot of hoops to go through, all these permits that they need. You can challenge them there, at least temporarily. Probably challenge that. One objection I heard to the Armory data center was that they posted the agenda late and with the wrong date on it. So I don't think that's a permanent solution, but that's a kind of thing that you can go after.
Do you know if the Botanical Garden took a position on that data center?
Not that I've heard of, no.
the botanical garden and, to my knowledge, MDC published a statement on all of the species that exist in the Merrimack River along Shaw Nature Reserve's border, and how those species are very rarely found in other places in the state and are pretty heavily concentrated in that area. And the garden's lawyer and a speaker from MDC did go up in front of that data center committee, whoever, and made that abundantly clear. There was also an article published saying the same thing, and then they decided to pass it anyway, as it turns out.
I hope I made it clear. I'm not sure if I did make it clear, but that's not final until the Franklin County Commission approves of it. So you've still got a forum.
My question is about the fact that we are concerned about transparency, and these are money-making endeavors. Is there any data on foreign investors getting behind this and pushing it?
Very possible. I don't know.
No data right now, then.
What I know of is not foreign investors. It's the Meta and Google, Amazon, the heavy hitters. So I've not read about foreign investors, but they've got tons of, the people we're talking about have tons of money, so they've got plenty of money to put in.
We got the big companies right here in America.
If you'd like to make a comment as well over here about Franklin County, how we could still fight that. I think you said it needed to go to the council?
The county commission. They're the final decision maker on this, on the zoning.
Do you have any idea when that next meeting is?
No, I don't know if it's been scheduled yet. It has to be publicly noticed with 24 hours in advance, so watch carefully.
My question is, Illinois seems to be doing better than Missouri. How are you guys succeeding in Illinois, and how much are you succeeding in Illinois?
Great question. We are the fifth most data center heavy states in the country. Illinois was targeted by data centers quite a while ago, so we've got hundreds of them. You folks don't have as many yet, so we've had that to work with. We also have, I'm wondering if you have this in the state of Missouri, and if you don't, it would be a really wonderful thing to set up. If there is someone in Missouri who's doing data center work and is knowledgeable, what we do is we have a Zoom meeting every other Thursday, and it's the Coalition for Responsible Data Center Development, something like that. And anyone from the state, whether you're with an organization or not, anyone with concerns about data centers in their communities can join these calls, ask questions, share resources, share information. That's been a huge help. We also have, Sierra Club has done a lot of work in terms of putting together toolkits and some guidance for us, so we've had that to work with. We're part of the Clean Jobs Coalition. We worked on our Clean and Reliable Grid Affordability Act legislation last year, which had a little piece on the backup generators. That was when I talked about the second tier or fourth tier, tier 4 backup generators. We got that passed last year. This year we have legislation to put better guardrails around data centers, and I understand that it's pretty nation-leading stuff. So we've been talking about it for a while, and our communities, the Springfield folks, were already organized around some other issues. We've got a power plant, a coal-fired power plant that we're looking to get a retirement date for. At least we were. And so they were already organized. They had a good foundation. When they found out that the data center was being proposed, they just got the word out, and within 3 days, they had a public meeting that had over 100 people in attendance. It required the county to get a large venue for a bigger public meeting. So what I've heard of happening in Missouri is getting your foundation in place, and I think that's happening. It needs to happen in every community possible so that you're ready to go. And if there's anything we can do to be helpful, like help somebody get this listserv set up so that you can have these meetings every 2 weeks with folks, get the word out, we would love to be able to help with that. We've got some good expertise on the other side of the river. Yeah.
Use some a database so I can answer all these questions about what stage all these applications
Back to my
are
question
at.
again. So zoning in rural Missouri seems like, to me, it's almost non-existent. Is it like that in rural Illinois, or are there tighter guide rails in rural Illinois? It varies? Okay.
They've looked at some communities that
A lot of places have no zoning at all.
This is off topic, so I hope you'll accommodate the question. If not, so be it.
Let me jump in real quick, if you don't mind. Sally, just to stay with that topic about the Sierra Club toolkit, could you talk a little bit more about that, how they can get their hands on it?
Big Tech Unchecked, that toolkit, I think was put together by the Minnesota chapter. It is in the resource page that hopefully you got through the QR code. They have a lot of good pieces. The other toolkit that I did not get a chance to put in the resource page because I just learned of it this morning was I put the slide up. And if you search AI now, you can go to that toolkit. They've got a ton of information. So Sierra Club also has general data center guidance. That was also part of the resource page.
And just to let you know, this is being recorded tonight, and Audubon is going to put it on their website so that people that weren't able to come to the meeting tonight can view it. We will also put it on ours as well. So,
Should I address my question off topic, off the microphone, since it's being recorded?
well, let's stay with the topic, and you know, when we're done for the evening, I think you could talk to these two separately. So, any other questions related to data centers at this point? Okay, great. Thank you all for coming. Let's get a round of applause for our two speakers. Thanks again.